We had Denver and Boston last night. Teased it at the end of the show yesterday. TNT doubleheader. Miami, Dallas led into it. That ended up being a great game too. But you had Denver and you had Boston. And man, what a hell of a game. Did we get an NBA Finals preview? Is that our NBA Finals? Are we jacked if we get Boston, Denver? Because that was a great basketball game that came down to the end.
I think so. If it turns out that way, I would be very happy with it. I think Boston is clearly the best team in the league right now.
Hold on. Just by record, or just you think they're the best team?
I think they're the best. Like when I watch them. Like I think.
Do you think they're going to win the NBA title? Because I think that's my definition of who I think the best team is.
I think they can.
Okay. Yes.
I know that's a bailout answer.
That is a big bailout answer.
But I think they can win. And I think we'd be very happy with this matchup. Jokic going back, Denver trying to repeat.
Yep.
And can this Boston team, who I think is very likable, I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are very, very likable players. I love Tatum. Tatum's one of my favorite players in the league.
What are you doing with Tatum last night? Crunch time comes. Jaylen Brown was pretty good for them. What do you do with Tatum open, like wide open corner three, down two, another brick? He's having a real thing here with these shots at the end of games. He's like 0 for 6.
I understand that. If he's wide open, you got the light.
No. I'm not saying he doesn't have the light. Ken Barkley's talked about this before. If you bet or you bet. He doesn't pick Boston because he doesn't think they have the guy, right? Jimmy Butler came up big at the end of that Dallas-Miami game last night. Doncic has made, you go through all of these big teams. They all have a guy. Who is Boston's guy? Is it Holiday? Holiday hit a massive shot.
I'd rather the ball in Jaylen Brown's hand.
Yeah, but they're not operating that way. They're operating with Tatum being the guy.
And that's strange. Like, it's kind of like it's like PKs in soccer. Like you got guys that take PKs that are ice cold, like just nail it every time.
Yeah.
And then they go on a streak where they miss 2 or 3. Sometimes it's good to say, okay, we're going to take this off of you. We're going to have somebody else do this for a moment and let you get yourself right. And I think if Boston really wants to do a run, that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to say, okay, Jason, not right now. Let's give you a breather on this. Whether it's the noise or whatever's going on in your head, we're going to have Brown be the guy for a moment, or Holiday be the guy. I think that would benefit him long term.
I think you have to. What you worry about though is you never want a guy to shy away from open looks,
of course.
Nor do you want it to keep plaguing him. There's a lot of athletes that they go through these moments and it's low. Guys can get out of it. He kind of just needs to hit a buzzer beater at this point, I think, to break out of it.
And I think what I'm saying is if that's what I meant about if he's wide open, give him the light.
Sure.
But if he's dribbling and then he's got a fadeaway to hit the shot,
he's a Kobe guy.
That's the shot that I don't want him taking right now.
Overall, as a whole last night, he didn't have a good night, right? Like you were saying on yesterday's show, go listen on the podcast. You can get it anywhere, that it kind of hinges on Jaylen Brown playing. And even still with him scoring 40+, like they lost by 6. I don't know if it's like
5 of 13, 2 of 5 from downtown, 15 points.
Yeah, he just wasn't good.
So, and that was a massive,
8 assists.
I know it's the NBA, there's 82 of these. We're kind of getting to the end here.
Yes.
That was a big game.
That's a big game.
You can feel it with the top end teams. They bring an energy to it. You had this in Indiana, Minnesota, for God's sakes. That was a fantastic basketball game. Did they shoot a lot of threes? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I watched the NBA in the 90s. They shot a lot of bad twos.
Yeah.
Shot 41% tonight. You know what I mean?
That guy hits a 15-foot jumper 43% of the time. You're like, that's not great.
I just thought last night was a great game, and I just that's the reason. Last night was the reason, Schultze, I'm taking Denver. I will bet on Denver going into it. Chris Haynes asked Jokic in the postgame, kind of a finals matchup, and you could see Jokic smiling like, what are you saying? There is so much basketball to be played. But these two teams look like they definitely could get there if they're not going to get there. And that matchup, it's if Tatum's going to struggle, it's not the greatest matchup for them. Denver's got athletic pieces all over. They're long, they're rangy, they can switch. Jokic can guard multiple positions.
And they got guys
matchup.
They got guys that can come off the bench. Like Peyton Watson last night had 11.
He was good.
That's huge.
Yeah, Christian Brown.
Exactly.
Yep.
They've got guys that can come off the bench and have impacts. I don't know if Boston has that. But when you were asking, is this a potential matchup? I think Jokic, I agree with you that we're getting to the nitty-gritty and it's time to kind of put up or shut up. But I think the reason Jokic is talking about there's a lot of basketball If Boston's not in the finals, I am very surprised. If Denver's not in the finals, I'm less surprised. Because the West, I think, is going to be harder to get through than the East. No Joel Embiid. We don't really quite know what's going on in Milwaukee.
I think my thing with the West, I think the West is going to be a lot of fun and exciting and unpredictable. I just can't identify the team that I think can beat them in a 7-game series.
I agree, but I do think Clippers are harder out than anybody else in the East.
They're a little smaller, though.
Phoenix is going to be a little tough if they can get it together.
I'm not worried about Phoenix.
Minnesota, like they're just teams.
I don't know. Minnesota, Gobert.
But these teams are going to be harder to get through than
the
Orlando
most of these. Yes,
and
okay.
Miami, even Miami right now.
To your point, well,
that's what I mean.
But you're going to tell me, though, what's happened the last few years.
I've never betting against Jimmy Buckets. Never.
That's what I'm saying is you're telling me.
That's my guy. He's my favorite player in basketball.
You're telling me Boston gets Miami round 1, 1-8
They're
matchup?
shaking in their boots.
Yeah, they're clenching a little bit.
Big time clenching.
They should be able to beat Miami.
They should.
But they've had a thing with that team.
Buckets.
Yes.
That's my guy.
They almost did it last night against Dallas.
I remember last year watching Jimmy Buckets in the playoffs, going to myself, man, I would love him in a Blazer uniform. Him and Dame would be so rad.
They could have had that.
And then Dame goes, I want to go to Miami. And I was like, stole my idea.
Well, they could have had him. They chose not to trade CJ.
Well, I know.
When he was in Minnesota.
But I'm just saying, like, that is how much I love Jimmy Butler. You're right. But I think Butler aside. Now, the Bucks could put it together.
No, but
the Bucks could put it together.
That would be my counter to you. You can't name a team for me that I would say, I think they can beat Denver in a 7-gamer if they stay healthy. Counter to that would be, I think Milwaukee can beat Boston. They don't. They certainly have their struggles. They just lost to Golden State. They got ran in that game. But it's Giannis and Dame, and so if they get hot and they figure some stuff out and Middleton's Middleton, that's not stunning me. Whereas, like, I'm looking at the West, Phoenix, Dallas, Lakers, Minnesota, OKC, and even the Clippers, who have put this together pretty nicely. I just don't think they have the right pieces to stop that dude from winning the West again.
I agree. I guess what I'm saying is that those are going to be longer series,
tougher fights,
tougher games. That's what I mean. I'm with you. I see what you're saying. I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee wins in a 7-game series. You tickled my Jimmy Butler fandom right here, so I wouldn't be shocked about that either. But in the West, yeah, I don't like anybody beating Denver, but I like Denver getting pushed by multiple teams, potentially in multiple rounds.
I love you guys bringing up Milwaukee. I think they're a little bit deeper than Boston overall. I feel like Boston's already kind of having to shorten their rotation like you do in the playoffs, and maybe they're peaking too early because of that. What did they just rattle off, like an 11 or 12-game winning streak a couple of weeks ago? I always get worried about these really good teams at the top of conferences, especially in basketball, peaking too early. So you see Tatum having an off night. It's like, well, hopefully that's just an off night and not like the tale for the rest of the season for the next month, having off nights for the next 20 games.
They are 1-6. The Celtics losing last night. They fall to 1-6 since January against top 7 teams in the NBA.
Yikes. Their
lone win is an overtime win against Minnesota. So it's not that Boston suddenly isn't going to be there. It's not that they can't win the title. I thought that was a finals preview. And Denver showed, like, yo, it's going to be a tough one. It's probably a 6-7 game series, but we've got the horses. And, oh, by the way, we've got the best player of the two teams.
Yeah, and it didn't look like Denver was firing on all cylinders, like they look good.
No,
but it wasn't like
they can play better.
They can play better.
I think that's what's scary about it.
And you still won.
Yes.
Jokic had to triple-double to get them the win.
Yeah.
And it was a 32, 12, and 11 triple-double.
Do you think
Yeah, Murray was 7 of 18, by the way, sub 50%. He was fine. He finishes with 19 points. He was 1 of 4 from 3. Like, you go through some of their usual guys. Caldwell Pope, 1 of 4 from 3. They did not shoot. They shot 19% from 3, and they won. What's going to happen when they're shooting 39%, 44%?
Jokic didn't take a 3-point shot.
No, my wife goes, can he? Because my wife she doesn't dive in on NBA every day the way I do. And
Sure.
she saw him and she goes, God, this slow white guy, can he shoot a 3? And I go, actually, yeah. And she goes, it seems like he can do everything. I go, that's why he's the best player in the world right now. He might be one of the greatest players I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that's true. Let me. Why are we so tough on Boston? Are we tough on Boston because?
Are we tough on Boston?
I mean, we, the collective.
They get the most national games.
That's
They're
what I was
shoved down our throats because of their history.
It's a Boston thing. It's not this team.
We
like
love to
these
hate
players.
the city because they're emotionally unstable.
And racist.
But I lived there. I hate those fans.
Yeah, Schulte's always on that. And then I think the other thing is,
Because
win a title with Tatum. It just feels like it's always Tatum and the Celtics, Tatum. It doesn't help that the biggest NBA podcast in America is Bill Simmons, and half of his pod always has to be
the Celtics.
on the Boston Celtics. And if they lose, he's only 25. And it's like, yeah.
Because that's what I find interesting, because I find the players on Boston extremely likable. Like the team, the players, Joe Mazzulla's not terrible.
I don't have a problem with the players.
I really enjoy them. And it's funny that
because they failed.
The logo can still turn a sour on them.
They should have won the 22 finals.
Agreed.
They were better than Golden State.
Yep.
What happened last year? Everybody talks about Milwaukee losing. Yeah, that's the greatest upset in NBA history. Boston, line 2.
Yeah.
They also lost.
Yeah. I don't know. The Boston loss was like, ooh.
They come off a little San Francisco 49er-ish. They're really good. They might be the best team. They can't win this.
Can't figure it out at the end.
And maybe they will
Tatum
this year.
was bad in the finals against the Warriors.
He was atrocious.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown was their best player.
Yeah.
So
got him paid at least.
I don't know. Finals preview, that was a nice one.